Welcome, welcome. Hello, this is Changemakers Forward, and you have just joined the event When It's All Too Much. And I'm looking forward to a really exciting conversation. We've got people here from Belgium, from the Netherlands, from Kenya, and from Switzerland. And I'm seeing people from the US and some more from Belgium, I think, on the chat at the moment, so that's all very excellent. My name is Wiebke Herding. You see my picture there on the top right, and you might hear my voice a little. I'm just the one who's asking the questions. So, welcome. The way we're doing these events with Changemakers Forward is we've invited a few people to share their story, but we're really interested in having a conversation with all of you that are here. It's just one of the restrictions of this Google Hangout that we're using, that we can't actually have all of you here in this room with videos and voices. So if you haven't done so yet, please do join us in the chat. There's a really good conversation already starting there. And we'll also try to get your questions and your responses into this conversation from the chat, even though we can't physically get you into the conversation. Also, I think we have about a 20-second delay between what we speak and what you hear in through the broadcast. So if we don't respond right away, that is simply why that is the case. So welcome. As we're starting our conversation today and our exploration of being a change maker and maybe sometimes taking on too much and getting overwhelmed with all the things that we want to do and all the limits that we might sometimes run into. I would like you to maybe take a breath and imagine you are actually sitting with us here in a circle, maybe on a beautiful mountaintop, or maybe just somewhere else, maybe in a meeting room. We're all here together, even though we are all sitting at our separate tables. And maybe you want to just place your feet on the ground. Maybe you want to take a stretch. Just make sure that you're here with us. And as we're checking in, I would like you to maybe think about what is it that in your story that that brings you here. What is your particular point in when did you last feel like it was all too much for you? What brings you here? When did you last feel like it was all too much for you? I'm inviting everybody to maybe add a sentence to the chat. What are you bringing to this conversation? And I can maybe start by sharing a story that I came across last week. So I was at a conference in the US called the Nonprofit Technology Conference. Lots of change makers around, and I had basically taken the week to be there and also to travel a little and set up an out-of-office reply. And so I was talking to some people there, and I was saying that it was a real practice for me to not reply to my clients when they were writing to me that week, because I knew that they were getting this out-of-office reply, and I also wanted to model that it's okay to take a vacation, and it's okay to not respond to every request that comes up immediately. And people found that really strange, because the feeling that I was getting back was that there is this expectation that you always have to respond to everything immediately, because if you don't, there will be even more when you come back to the office. So there's, in this nonprofit world, this really, really big expectation to do everything that we possibly can, and then not giving ourselves permission to take a break and to take a breath. And I'm seeing a couple of comments already in the chat. Fabiola, do you want to share them with us? And you'll need to unmute yourself for that.
Thanks for that. Yes. Well, we have things like a few months ago, it was too much for Katia. She's saying that she left her job a few months ago and she found it pointless. So that's, that's just. Bob, he had, last year lots of back-to-back projects, and Chris is saying too much hats for one person. Who else we have here? Ginger, she's saying when she was overwhelmed with all the social media and giving her power away. And Suresh, he's saying felt exhausted at times, then get into silence and recharge. That's what we have for now.
Excellent.
What is coming? Yeah. Right, yes, and for me, I would say it was about 2 years ago. It was a very stressful time, and yeah, that's the one I think I can't remember most right now.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, and I think we picked this conversation because this was also a topic that came up in when we last hosted a Changemakers Forward call about the question of what do changemakers need. It's this feeling that actually this is a story that we all have, and it's a story that we oftentimes don't talk about. Oh yes, and I'm just seeing Lara, who's joining, who's saying like, yeah, now is the moment I'm feeling overwhelmed. Welcome, Lara. Lara, you're not alone. So let me give you a. Oh, sorry, I've got the video on, and I actually do want to show you the screen. So let me just give you an overview of what we had planned. What we had planned for you. So we have with us two amazing change makers. One is Roshan from Kenya and India and the US and all over the place, who you'll tell us a little bit more about exactly how you got there. But I think for me, in like knowing your story, Roshan, it was a lot about trying to make big change in the world and realizing that actually sometimes slowing down is exactly what is needed to make change. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about the story. And then we have Jenny Ebermann, who's currently based in Switzerland, but also there's a story of Belgium and Germany in there, and we'll hear from her. Jenny has worked a lot with big organizations and realized how it's sometimes difficult to make change there. And I think there's a question there, and kind of how can we take our power when we're trying to make change within organizations, and how can we also recharge when we're feeling like it's all too much. So looking forward to that. And also I think the really interesting part in this is for us all to look at, okay, what are the patterns here? What are our stories? What are our thoughts? What can we offer each other to on this as support on this issue? Yes? Okay. Then I would love to invite Roshan up, and I'm just going to pull up your video because I can. Hello?
Sorry, I was unmuting. Okay, hello.
Hello. So Roshan, you tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get to where you are now? Where did your story as understanding yourself as a change maker, where did that start?
Sure. So I'm from India, originally from Bangalore in India, and I grew up a very kind of normal life, middle-class life. I didn't, didn't really have any inkling of change making at all as a kid. All I did was play cricket, really. So those of you who might be familiar with that sport. But around the end of high school, I realized that I wasn't going to be a professional cricket player, and to cure my broken heart, I then moved to America, where they don't know anything about cricket, and went to college over there. And again, like most foreign students in the US, I was looking at a career in consulting or banking, and was happily interviewing with those types of organizations or those types of companies. But my final year of university was the same year as September 11th. And September 11th was followed by a terrorist attack in India, and also some very violent riots between Hindus and Muslims in Western India. And by this point, the US is bombing Afghanistan and starting to gear up for bombing Iraq. And I'm about to go work for a very prestigious consulting firm. And it all didn't seem to make any sense. It felt that there were, much more important and, things and challenging things out there in the world that I could be spending my time on doing, rather than helping to, make an oil company more efficient or insurance company more profitable. And so I just felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it had to be in the realm of making, trying to reduce conflict and make the world a better place. So I would say that was the original impulse, and started off a career in the social entrepreneurship or the social sector. Yeah.
You then got involved with Ashoka, didn't you?
That's right. I worked at Ashoka after college for about 10 years, first in India, then after my master's back at Ashoka in the US, and that was sort of a period of globaholic-ism, as I sometimes call it, because I was traveling all around the world, working, or maybe globaholism or something like that would be a more elegant way of putting it, but running all around the world, helping social entrepreneurs. And this starts to bring us a little bit to our topic of the day, because I noticed several things in that decade of working in social entrepreneurship. And one of those things was that most of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world are extremely tired. And in some ways feeling that their organization is as much of a burden as it is a responsibility. And I was in some conversations with some very well-known people who just talked about how deeply exhausted they were, and if they could give it all up tomorrow, they would. And so that was a real eye-opener for me, because these were people that I admired over a long period of time. And these are people who have literally changed the world. I say that with a straight face. They have changed the world. And to hear them talk about their level of burnout, their level of exhaustion, was very instructive. And that helped me when I was starting my own organization, which is around helping people to design careers about meaning, where they build meaning and impact and train for impactful work in the social sector, to build in elements of renewal and recharging, and making sure that your own journey, or your inner journey, as we call it, is aligned with the work that you want to do. And so I could talk a lot more about that, but I realize I'm getting away from your question.
Don't worry. You were saying that one of the things that you saw was that most successful social entrepreneurs are extremely tired. Is self-exploitation a precondition to be successful as a change maker?
I don't know if I connect with the word self-exploitation there, but the way I would put it is that when you're committing your life to something bigger than you, it doesn't matter. Oftentimes you take yourself for granted in the process, and it seems right. Like it seems like when you've got these big challenges that you're facing, or people who are suffering, people or opportunities to go after, then yeah, what's a few hours less sleep, or another pizza rather than a good meal. So those trade-offs become quite easy to make when you sort of have a commitment to something that's a lot bigger than you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you can call it self-exploitation. I would sort of say the collateral damage of living for a cause that's bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm. How much collateral damage are you taking at the moment?
I'm trying not to count. No, I mean, I'm actually just, my co-founder and I both, spent a couple of years incubating Amani Institute, which is the organization that we started. And for that process, we worked 2 jobs. Essentially, we had our day job, and then we did Amani Institute on weekends and at night. And then when we started, we had no funding, so we bootstrapped this. So we needed to keep our day jobs for as long as possible. Mm-hmm. And so then the organization, our work started. We quit our day jobs like the week that our first big program began, and then we had 2 years of that. And so it's sort of been like a 4 to 5 year process of essentially working nonstop, and we were pretty burnt out by that point, and started to feel like we weren't getting enough joy from the actual work of training and coaching of students, and that was a danger sign, because that's why we got into this in the first place. So that was when we knew we needed to pay attention to our own inner journeys, so to speak, and so we did that in different ways. What I did was I took a 4-month break from my life in Nairobi, and spent some time reconnecting with friends and family in the US and India mostly, but also a bit in Europe. And then I took 3 weeks for myself in Bali, and did what I called a deceleration, where though I was in Bali, I wasn't a tourist. I really was sort of, meditating a lot and just sort of spending a lot of quiet time by myself and allowing for that recovery. So what I needed was to reconnect with friends and family. I needed to plug back into different parts of my own life that had been really meaningful in the past, and then also get some quiet time. And I made sure to do all of that. Very little of this was actual vacation, so I didn't take really vacation in any of this, but except for maybe a bit of the Bali time. But what I did do was, and this is going to sound maybe perhaps bizarre to some of you, but I promised myself I wouldn't work after dinner.
You wouldn't work after dinner.
Yeah, and I tried this, and I stuck to that, and it was painful at times, but I did it. So, I'm one of those complete workaholics, or, people who believe that, the reason that I'm put on this earth is to try and make this happen. And so sometimes that's more fun to do than, casually bantering with people in a bar, which, is much less meaningful to me. So.
So what effect has this deceleration had for your work as a change maker?
Well, it's early to say, because it's just a couple of months now since I came back into full-time work, but it was great. It was really needed. I got a few powerful insights, I think, about the way I regard work and the way I regard vacation, and so on. And I've written a blog post about that I'd be happy to share later. But and how I'm going to start changing the way I look at them, but no, it's been great to be back. I actually came back to Nairobi extremely refreshed and happy to be here, and kind of come sort of, while loving my organization and what we're trying to do, kind of gotten tired with living in Kenya, and I came back much happier and excited to be here and come into a new phase. I've made some changes personally and to make my life a bit more sustainable. And invest a bit more in my life here. So I've made some changes as a result that have been productive and positive.
Yeah, there seems to be kind of an interesting connection in there. There's on the one hand this aspect that if you're really doing something that you feel passionate about and where you see the purpose, it does not matter how much of your energy you put into it. So that's the one. And then there's this phase where we put so much energy into something that we re-find the joy that we lose the joy in our work, and we start. I don't know. Maybe were you doubting the purpose of the work that you were doing, or was it just that it wasn't fun anymore?
Yeah, I wasn't doubting the purpose ever.
Yeah.
You know, we're lucky enough to get constant feedback and reinforcement from our fellows and clients and stuff that we knew what we were doing was completely worth it. It was more just that I was tired and the day-to-day was exhausting in a way that it shouldn't have been. So, and I also just needed to reconnect with other aspects of my life as well.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I mean, of course there's this thing, if I'm tired and if I don't find the joy in the work that I'm doing, it's a lot harder for me to do a good job at it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know many people who have stopped finding that purpose, that passion for what they were doing, and then they knew it was time for change, you know. So I've seen that story many times. It hasn't yet happened to me, but I've seen it in other people.
Yeah. So if you're looking at your journey and also your work with other change makers, what advice would you give others when they think it feels too much, I'm really tired in what I'm doing right now?
At that, I think the advice I would give is try not to get to that moment. And then that would be a different set of things that you would do. But if you're at that moment, then what I would say is you're probably doing nobody any favors by continuing to stay there. So find some time, find some space, get away. Do whatever you need to do to recharge yourself. It could be, going on a meditation retreat. It could be going to church every day. It could be learning how to play the violin. Whatever it is that will help you to recharge and renew your batteries, do it, because you're not going to be productive where you are in that moment. So take a break, and I think that notion of rest and recovery has been with us from the beginning. I'm not a religious person, but I do know that in the Bible it says on the seventh day even God rested. So we can give ourselves a break there.
Yeah. I'm seeing that there's lots of comments and conversation in the chat, so maybe we can pull in some of those observations that you had in the chat into this conversation. Maybe also if you have questions to Roshan or comments to what you heard, what resonated with you, please don't forget to put them in the chat. But Fabiola, what did you hear? What did you see? Don't forget to unmute yourself because I can't hear you. Fabiola? Yes.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Well, yes, we have comments coming in. Something in relation to passion. When passion, Chris Schilling is saying, the day I have no more passion for it, I know it's time to change. So something in relation that Roshan mentioned. And Michaela is wondering how we can remind each other that we need to slow down. Mm-hmm. And, something like someone asking in chat, how are you today? And also Chris comments that if we forget, our body will tell us. So these are hints about how can we be more attentive to how we're doing in terms of overwhelm.
Yeah.
I'd like to pick up that point about if we forget, our body will tell us. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I notice it a lot in my own body. That there are some warning signs that I have that I know that it's time to do something different, or to have a day off, or to do something different. And I think it's really worth paying attention to what your body is telling you. So,
right.
So I agree with Chris there.
Yeah, I've also just typed the question into the chat. What practices do you have that help you slow down? Because I'd love to hear from everybody's expertise here. I know that one of the workshops I participated in last week was one that was called Walk is Work. So it was about how to incorporate walking into our changemaker journey. And one of the arguments was that if we take time to just walk, we get better ideas because we have a chance to like lift our like busy mind from like what's currently on the to-do list to like actually what's the big picture. And we might be able to like do the things that actually make a difference instead of just doing the things that other people have asked us to do 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes,
so
I can hear you.
That overwork can lead to a lack of passion. I have felt that. But in reality, I just needed to slow down. That's very interesting. It might be that we don't feel passion because we are overwhelmed, but that doesn't mean that we need to quit that job necessarily. That's very interesting. Yeah. Katia, she says, I have been recently wondering if having an outsider as a mentor or coach can be a good idea to better regulate our pace and some help on our professional practices.
Have you been working with a mentor or coach, Roshan?
I have a mentor. He doesn't necessarily accept the title, but I've given it to him regardless. But no, I mean, I think more than anything is what I call. I think in general, I completely agree with Katya that it's really nice to have outside people to better regulate our pace. I think there's a whole industry coming up of life coaches. I mean, they've always been with us, but the number of people these days that are becoming life coaches, I sometimes joke that the two biggest things on my Facebook wall these days are baby pictures and people announcing that they're now a life coach. But I think that that shows that there's a that there's an increasing demand for that, and I think it's more rather than a coach. What I do is I like the concept of a kitchen cabinet slightly better, and that's been more helpful for me in that I have a
Oh, are we losing you, Roshan? So now I'm curious what the idea of a kitchen cabinet is. But my guess is that Roshan probably means having a group of people that you can rely on. And also, if I'm thinking of mentors and coaches, I think we don't always need to think about those that we pay or that we have a formal relationship with, but also just actually picking mentors. Like I can choose who I want to be inspired by and who I'm going to go to ask for help, and also being coaches to each other. There he is.
Yeah. Did you lose me there?
I lost you when you just mentioned that you love the kitchen cabinet, and then we missed the explanation from you.
Okay. Do you want me to do it again?
That would be great because then everybody can hear it.
Sure. So the concept of a kitchen cabinet is not to have one person, but a group of people that can help you with different aspects of your life. So whether it's the minister of relationship, or the minister of money, or the minister of family, who's going to help you with different aspects of your life. And I like that notion of a cabinet or a council that can, to me, that works better for me personally than having one person be a coach or a mentor. Though I also, strongly support the idea of having a coach and a mentor.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And I see Michaela's asking whether we're saving the chat. That we're certainly doing. And people seem to really enjoy the idea of when it's all too much, to incorporate art and creativity and ritual. So there's suggestions of trying to sing and dance at desks and to do art journals. So I love the creativity that's coming up here. Okay, so I would now like to take our virtual traveling ball from Nairobi and move and fly over to Switzerland. And I hope you'll stay with us, Roshan, and you'll be able to contribute to the conversation either in the chat or later when we talk.
Sure, I plan to do that, but I do need to go and get my charger. So I'm going to do that and then come back.
Perfect. You know where to find us.
Yeah.
So we've got Jenny with us. Hello, Jenny.
Hi there.
Where are you sitting at the moment?
Well, I'm sitting in beautiful Switzerland, and the sun is shining, and we feel like already May or later, although there are no flowers yet, but it's very nice here.
And you've had a slightly different journey than Roshan did.
Yes.
How did you get to where you are right now?
Yes, and that's a very good question, actually. So it took me longer in my life, I think, to realize actually who I am and what I am, maybe than Roshan. I mean, he explained that at the end of high school already, he knew what was going to happen. I just started off, so I grew up in Belgium, and I'm of German origin, but then I went on studying in England and other countries, and ended up as well working in Canada for many years. I first started with the sports industry, and I always thought to myself, like, even when I was still junior in my professions, I was like, oh, why am I different? You know, I mean, why am I talking to people differently, or what is happening here in this environment? And then basically I went on and I saw many things happen within the organization. I wasn't completely agreeing with it, but I thought, oh, well, let's see what life has to bring. And I then continued my journey and found the international development environment that I found really passionate. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Maybe, you know, I can do something there to make the world a better place somehow, you know, because I then discovered that it's actually nice to help others as well, and that I needed to do that, because I personally needed a goal, and I needed that type of work so that I could feel happy as well. And but then I discovered that in the United Nations or even other bigger organizations, things are moving like a dinosaur, and I felt further away actually from people than I've ever felt before. So life had it then that I ended up as well, for the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I worked for an international or multinational corporation, which was something that I didn't have in my life. I mean, after the UN, I moved on to international NGOs and agencies, because I just decided that I didn't want to be in my sports cage, if you so want, as I didn't want really to be in there the whole time, and I wanted to spread my wings and fly. So in the corporation world, I then had the chance to work over many countries and be responsible for a team, and really have a good job there. But what I found was, yes, finally the corporation had money to be able to change something, but I mean, they didn't want to do it either. And then I saw that myself, I was receiving over 300, 400 emails a day, and running around, and that people got restructured. I was a number, you know, E514788. I still remember. It's like, yes, sir, you know, I'm here, and always a number. And people were just being treated as such. I constantly had the impression that they were running against walls and just spending their time on phone calls on mute without having to say anything, and just because it was like mandatory that you're on the call, and they spend their days like that. And I started to rebel against that, and I said, no, if you want my time, you need to give me an agenda, and I cannot be on mute for hours, and I have a life. So I openly declared I have a work-life balance, and then basically hell broke loose, meaning that it wasn't okay. I was told that it was mandatory to be and do whatever the company wanted from you, basically. And I then had the body that didn't respond well anymore, because I had a major health incident where I just couldn't continue. So I was at the edge of burnout. I just crumbled down, and I thought, where am I? Where am I? What is happening to me? I wasn't aligned with myself anymore. But when you're in it, you don't notice it directly. So unfortunately, my body had to tell me. And then I found for myself my sports back, because I always did sports, and suddenly I found it back. And then, I mean, I had children as well, which limits the time that you have for yourself, obviously, between work and children and everything. But then I also found mindfulness. So I thought, whatever, just let's try it and see if it works. And it was really amazing, because after a couple of months, I was a different person, and I was more aligned. Things just started to happen, and I stumbled into tons of interesting people who said, "Oh, go and have a training here and do that," and it was so exciting. And I thought, "Wow, there's a whole new world there. I didn't know about it." And yeah, that's when finally I found myself again.
So it sounds like a lot of your story was like looking for like a bigger context to have a bigger impact, and at the same time noticing that the bigger the context you're working in, and maybe also the better resource, the further away it was from like people and what actually mattered, and getting treated as a number.
Yes, exactly. And that for me was the worst thing, was that suddenly I found myself sitting in international marketing meetings, because that was my background, and I thought, what am I doing here? I have one life. I spend it with people I don't like. I spend it with a subject which is interesting, but in the context, not really. Am I helping anybody? No. So, I kind of drew as well a vision map for myself, as I'm a professional coach as well, and it's always good to help others, but I didn't look at myself. And I thought, whoa, I mean, I'm far away from where I should be for myself. And then actually I was lucky. There was a major restructuring going on, and I got restructured, and I thought, thank you. So this is the start of a new life. So it was really hard, I mean, to find the courage as well to take this new life. And so now I founded diversityandnew.com, which is really a business looking into mindful leadership for women, and advancing the cause and the women and other minorities, obviously, in companies. And I also do work with mindfulness for children and adults. So I feel extremely grateful. And every time I work with somebody and I see that things change for him or her, I feel like it is touching me personally. And I have less money, yes, but I feel like finally I have arrived somewhere, and my creativity, me as a human being, I am there. But then on the reverse flip side of the coin, I mean, exactly as Roshan says, I thought, oh, if you're freelance or you have your own company, maybe you'll have more time. Yes, I mean, no, not at all, because now it's even harder to limit your time, because it's so exciting what you do that it's extremely hard actually to switch off during the evenings or during the weekends and just have the time on your own. So I'm learning that as well.
Yeah. So how do you nowadays incorporate mindfulness into your workday when it's like busy and you want to do so?
So I of course, in formal or informal ways, practice every day. So, and of course, when you coach somebody or when you work with people, you cannot work with mindfulness and not incorporate it. So somehow it is always with you, even if you walk somewhere for a 5 minutes walk, or just noticing what it's looking like outside, having the sun in your face, or smelling a tree, or whatever, is already something that gives you basically stopping and noticing, being really present in the moment. This is something that I do now every day, which is fun. And yes, I mean, life is like a roller coaster, but I guess you decide how you want to be. Are you a victim, or are you the one shaping things? And you can decide whether to take that call or to say, well, like for example, Monday, I decided that the sun was shining and that really I didn't want to sit in the office, and so I went and got my children, and we went to the lake and we ate ice cream, and I thought, isn't this wonderful, So that was really awesome, and I would have never done that before.
I mean, you've observed a lot, kind of how big organizations work. For those of us who are maybe still working in a context where the human isn't always valued and where there's always more pressure, what advice, what good thoughts do you have for us to maybe bring the human back into our organizations, to maybe have an impact and to maybe be more mindful?
The first thing I would say is that you always have a choice. Even if you live in Switzerland and it's horribly expensive, the life that you have to live, and maybe you're the only one working because your partner isn't working or whatever, or you're alone, you always have a choice. And things fall into place when you're aligned with yourself. The interesting thing is you only have one life, and usually people at the end of their lives regret that they didn't slow down, that they didn't spend time with the people they love or whatever, the hobbies they have or whatever. So the title or whatever, a lot of money doesn't bring you your health. So being able to live every day fully is really something that everybody can do. And yes, your job may be boring, or I mean, you're not having fun every day, obviously, which is normal, but you can still bring some form of mindfulness and try to look at things as if you would look at a glass, maybe half full instead of seeing it half empty, and be happy with the small things. It doesn't have to be a title or a promotion or whatever, money. It can be a bird singing in the tree in the morning and just stopping and noticing that and making your day maybe a better day because you had that incident.
Yeah, I also before we have a look at what's happening in the chat, I also, when I was working with international NGOs, one of the things that I found really helpful to realize at one point was that there is always more work and there will always be more pressure, and my job description will always be bigger than whatever I have, and it's basically, it's my choice what part I'm not doing, because there will always be something that I'm not doing. And if I can at least make a conscious choice of what my priorities are in this context, instead of just following what other people put as priorities on my desk, that will help me be a more effective change maker, and it will also keep me sane because I'm actually steering this myself and not being thrown around by others.
Yes, and I mean, being a change maker is also one thing that is really important that people tend to forget, is the only person you can really change is yourself. You cannot change others. And by changing yourself, your attitude, your behavior, your being, you will affect others, and others will adapt and change around you. But you cannot go out and pretend to be changing others, because this is just not possible.
Yeah. So maybe also a question for everybody at the moment, what resonates from the story that Jenny has been telling, how you're experiencing overwhelm in organizations, how you're bringing mindfulness into your days. I'm just going to hand over to Fabiola to maybe share a little bit of what's been happening in the chat.
Right. So we have some things that are coming, like mindfulness and healthy balance. Somebody, I think Michaela mentioned something about rituals, integrating ritual into my life, singing and dancing as well. Somebody else, Ginger, yes, you said that. And people agreeing that when you are in it, you are not always aware of it, and then the change happens. We also have, just coming in now, Katia saying, finding the little details in life which bring a smile. So there's something about being more present, mindful, and enjoying the what is happening around us, and being more aware of it, that I'm finding it's coming out quite a bit. Chris just said now, enjoy your daily small achievements and moments with loved ones. Yes. Wonderful. Lara, she says, exactly, sunshine on my nose. A weird old man sipping his coffee. Yes, fantastic. Never take it personally. You know who you are and what you are worth, Chris is saying. Yes. What else we have? Anything else? Anyone?
So what I'm hearing a lot are the things that each of us can do individually to maybe come back to ourselves and to the moment. I think one of the conversations that I'd be really interested in, and this is just kind of me throwing in the question, and maybe Jenny and Roshan want to join me in this conversation, is kind of like, but what does this mean for the system? Like, how can we make it easier for change makers to not be overwhelmed? How can we support each other? Like, what do we need in order to make this easier on like everybody? Because this is a story, and we're not talking about it. I'm very much perceiving that there's this mental programming, this culture of if we're wanting to like change the world, there's always more to do. We always need to take on the bigger challenges, and we're not enough. We don't manage. The problems don't go away, and we're like this feeling of being inadequate when we don't manage to make the problems go away. I don't know, Jenny, Roshan, maybe you have some ideas of what does this mean for the system? How can we change this culture of getting overwhelmed and this culture of then keeping it to ourselves because we think that it makes us inadequate if we're not, and makes us not good enough if we don't manage to deal with the overwhelm ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I have to say, feeling overwhelmed, yes, I know, but feeling inadequate, no, because I'm very much self-centered now, and I work with emotional intelligence, so I kind of have a look at myself, I smile at myself, and I try to, whenever I'm judging again or whatever, just to stay with that emotion and let it go, basically. And I believe that we can all make a difference in the small niche we are in. Even if you're a hairdresser, if you're whatever, working on sustainability or like me and mindful leadership and that type of a thing, you choose where you're good at, and then you can do this however you want to make it happen and with whatever steps you make. And if it is just changing basically the way you educate your children or you interact with your family, that is already a big step. And for others, it might be changing an organization, or for others, it might be bigger, but not putting the pressure too much on yourself and just taking every little step at a time and moving forward. And of course, being in a network. I think that's what we saw in the chat as well, being in a network of supportive people, that when you have days where you're not at your best and where you really cannot anymore, that you have others telling you, hey, don't worry, next day will be better, and you have a support group basically looking out for you.
I don't think that in terms of the system as a whole, I think there's a number of things we probably need to do earlier on in terms of from school, bringing into the education system things around building your practices of renewal. Whatever makes you recharge, whether it's, again, sport or art or travel or whatever it is, that's okay, and it needs to be part of your life. And it's not, in any way wrong to want to integrate that. I think the harder answer and to that question, though, is around finding meaningful work. That is not going to bring up the question of work-life balance. So for me, I don't understand that concept because I don't see what I do as work like I see it as my life. And so I know that, sure, that sounds really annoying and irritating to to other people. But to me, it's like it's life integration. So it's like bringing all the different things that I do or that that make my life meaningful together in ways that make it possible, and that there are phases with that. And in this phase, right now, it's the organization I work at that is, dominates. But maybe later on in my life, there'll be family or something that will dominate. But I think if you're talking about work-life balance, you're already in a problematic situation because you're seeing it as work and life as a dichotomy, as two different things. And I recognize that that's probably the majority of people, and I think there are ways to make that better. But I think the ideal, the goal to strive for is not balance so much as integration, or just not even having the word work in there. But that's probably my take on it, annoying as that may be.
Yeah. No, I resonate with that very, very strongly. I mean, if I can find something that for me is meaningful. And it's also interesting because sometimes the meaningful part doesn't actually have to happen at work. I mean, I also know people who have a terribly boring job that pays the bills and are excellent change makers afterwards, and that can be balanced too. It's just that I need to find this one thing that gives me meaning, and the combination that I can finance it somehow, even if it might be a boring job somewhere else, and bring it in. We've also had a really nice contribution from Bav in the chat, who writes that it's a question of understanding how change works in the world. And so if we take a complex adaptive view of life, we may never fully know how the work we do makes a difference. And he spent 3 years trying to influence one organization, and it looked like he could achieve nothing. And at another level, lots of small changes are flowing here and there, and maybe a tipping point is coming. Maybe he had a part. Change is not linear, so working hard and taking on the big things does not mean more success. And that's also one thing that, for me, is really meaningful, because if I focus on the work that I can do, no matter kind of how small it is in the context that I am in right now, and try to make a difference there, and that can really be as small as I'm building community here locally and engaging with others around sustainability. It can be really small, but it's something where I can make a meaningful contribution. And if I do that, I don't have to be so frustrated that I'm not solving the bigger problem of climate change, for example. That problem will still be there, but I don't quite know how the exact logic to solving it will happen. I'm doing my part where I am right now. Fabiola, do you have other observations that you would like to bring in, or maybe also a couple of thoughts of yours?
Yes, I'm just looking at the chat now. Things like stealing the mind are coming from Ginger and cultivating insight. Acknowledging, saying, thanking, congratulating is coming from Lara. And then we have, yes, these comments from amazing insight from Baf as well that you just mentioned about. Yes, Lara says, in a network also share these little moments, show that they matter. And yeah, then Ginger, both Jenny and Roshan both demonstrated with their stories that change begins with awareness and insight. Then grasping this into this to form a direction, healthy balance that they had chosen. Yeah. Yes, and then Lara, yes, seeing oneself as just someone small, not taking yourself too serious, but seeing and loving the fact that you are a tiny creature in a huge universe, and that's okay. Yes. Well, I resonate with all of this, you know.
Yeah.
Also being there and had to become more present. I really felt like I started from scratch. Just, you know, putting the pieces together about what am I all about in all this, and reconnecting, rediscovering my purpose, and just making time in the morning to connect with that every day and renew. And kind of feel the flow of everything and not letting things overwhelm me. And try to put more play into my daily schedule. But it's not easy. It's easy to go back, to default back into doing, and feeling that it's nonstop, especially with all this social media and all the connectivity that we have. So setting boundaries has worked really well for me as well.
What kind of boundaries are you setting?
Well,
Not work after dinner.
I stopped all notifications on my mobile, so I only check it when I decide to check it. That's one way to build boundaries for me. Same with email, and just having more set times for doing specific things so that I don't feel like I have to be everywhere all the time. This is the kind of boundaries that, and especially because I have network and friends in different time zones, it can all the time. Feel like one is all over the place, and that is fascinating, but it's also overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what the role is in ChangemakersForward in helping us to not get overwhelmed? How could ChangemakersForward help with this? What's the idea here?
Well, it's just like it's happening right now. The idea is that by connecting, we can overcome the isolation or just this kind of disconnect and feeling that we are alone. And when we come together, share our stories, look at each other, there is something about empowering each other and looking at each other in each other's stories, and finding what works. Maybe what works for you can work for me, or just sharing that knowledge, that wisdom, and empowering each other so that we can hopefully sustain the path longer and healthier, and contribute to making the change that we're trying to make out there. Mm-hmm. So it's about community, it's about connecting, about sharing of our stories, and that kind of giving more visibility to the human story behind making change happen.
Yeah. And what is the question that we're bringing to the table right now? Yeah. And I think basically, as we're coming to the end of this conversation, of this exploration, I'll talk a little bit about kind of what the next steps are for us in ChangeMakersForward. But while I do that, maybe for each of you, if you have something that you think like, yes, this is one thing I'm taking away from this call. This was really, really meaningful for me. Please do write that into the chat. Maybe also if you have like one thing that you might want to do differently, not work after dinner, for example, or maybe look at the sunshine when it's out. So please do just write that in the chat as we're saying goodbye. And basically, so how we're continuing with ChangeMakersForward is you have all found the online community, and you will see that we'll give you a weekly prompt every Monday to check in with everybody. So that's a strong invitation to maybe check into what's your invitation your intention for the week. What are you currently working on? And then we have, in addition to these webinar meetings, we also run what we call a peer support circle, and the next one is meeting in 2 weeks. If you sign up at the moment, you'll still have a chance to determine which day and time zone it's going to be in. So that's an important chance to participate. And what we do in these peer support circles is we actually get everybody into the room on these hangouts. So we can only have 10 people there, but basically what we do is we work on each other's questions and problems. So we had a really, really good session 2 weeks ago. What were the questions we were working on? I think how can I better find combine the joy of what I'm doing and the work of what I'm doing? So very related to what we've been talking about today. So that's a very strong invitation to join us here. And I see some people are typing. That is amazing. Excellent. Jenny, Roshan, do you have some final words as we say goodbye?
I would say, yeah, we're just wishing everybody luck with, how they go about finding their own answers on this topic. I think answers are personal in this case.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to make the swim for themselves, so to speak, and it's nice to, I'm sure, listen to others and see how others are doing it, but ultimately you've got to come up with your own approach to it. And so I just wanted to wish everybody luck with that. And obviously, if you're interested to learn more about what we do at Amani Institute, and if you know people who are interested in training themselves for careers in making a difference and making change happen, do check us out online. We're very easy to find at Amani Institute, and I'm happy for anyone to have my email address as well. So good luck to all of you.
Thank you for joining us, Roshan. Jenny.
And for me, I mean, I put a quote already in the chat room. I just wanted to leave it out there, which is an old Eskimo proverb, which is going like, yesterday is ashes, tomorrow is wood, only today does the fire burn brightly, which for me is something I want to give you as a gift for your day and evening today. So, and of course, you can have my email address as well. Feel free to write to me. I'm on Facebook everywhere, so I'm happy to respond, to correspond, to discuss, and to network. So it was a great pleasure being with you today.
Yes, it was a great pleasure to have you around.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Roshan, Jenny, Witte. This is fantastic. And everyone, please remember that this is our virtual home as changemakers, and let's come to support each other anytime. And see you next time.
Yes.
See you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. The chat remains open, and we're now closing the webcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.